The Council of Clermont, Pope Urban II and the Call to the Crusades. Introduction: The roots of the crusading movement. The Council of Clermont, held in November 1095, marked a watershed moment in medieval history. It was here that Pope Urban II issued his dramatic call for the First Crusade, setting in motion a series of religious wars that would reshape Europe and the Middle East. Urban's appeal was a response to the request for military aid from the Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, who faced mounting pressure from Seljuk Turkish forces. However, the Pope's motivations extended beyond the immediate crisis, reflecting broader ambitions to unite Christendom, strengthen papal authority, and redirect European violence outward. Chapter 1: The Political and Religious Context. The Byzantine plea for help. By the late 11th century, the Byzantine Empire was under significant threat from the Seljuk Turks. The disastrous defeat at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 had left the empire's Anatolian heartland vulnerable, and Emperor Alexios I Komnenos sought Western military assistance to counter this growing menace. Alexios' appeal. Alexios reached out to Pope Urban II for help, framing his plea in terms of defending Christendom from Muslim aggression. This appeal offered Urban an opportunity to bridge the long-standing divide between the Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic churches, a rift that had deepened since the Great Schism of 1054. The state of Western Europe. Western Europe in the late 11th century was marked by political fragmentation and endemic violence. Feudal lords frequently waged private wars, and the knightly class, while militarily skilled, often directed its aggression toward local disputes. The Church's role in pacification. The Peace and Truce of God movements sought to curtail violence by imposing moral and religious constraints on knights. Urban II saw the Crusade as a means of channeling this martial energy toward a holy cause, uniting warring factions under the banner of Christendom. Chapter 2: The Council of Clermont. Convening the Council. The Council of Clermont was a synod attended by clergy, nobles, and knights from across Europe. It was held in central France, a location chosen for its accessibility and symbolic significance as a center of Catholic power. Urban's agenda. The Pope used the council to address various ecclesiastical reforms, reaffirming the Church's authority and moral leadership. However, the highlight of the gathering was Urban's sermon on November 27, 1095, which would ignite the crusading movement. Urban's speech. Although the exact wording of Urban's speech is unknown, multiple accounts by chroniclers such as Fulcher of Chartres, Robert the Monk, and Guibert of Nogent provide a vivid picture of its themes and impact. Key themes of the speech. Defense of Christendom. Urban framed the crusade as a righteous response to the persecution of Christians in the East and the desecration of holy sites, particularly Jerusalem. Promise of spiritual rewards. The Pope offered indulgences, guaranteeing the remission of sins for those who took up the cross. Unity of Christendom. Urban emphasized the need for Christians to put aside internal conflicts and unite against a common enemy. Apocalyptic rhetoric. He portrayed the crusade as a divine mission, invoking imagery of the struggle between good and evil. The famous cry. According to tradition, the crowd responded to Urban's appeal with the cry, Deus vult. God wills it. A rallying call that would become synonymous with the crusading movement. Chapter 3: Motivations for the Crusade. Religious motivations. Urban's call appealed deeply to the religious sensibilities of medieval Christians. Pilgrimage to the Holy Land was already a revered practice, and the crusade offered the chance to combine this spiritual journey with the defense of the faith. Indulgences and salvation. The promise of indulgences provided a powerful incentive, particularly for those seeking redemption for their sins. Participation in the crusade was framed as an act of penance that guaranteed eternal salvation. Social and economic factors. While religion was the primary motivator, the crusade also appealed to knights and nobles for social and economic reasons. Land and wealth. The opportunity to acquire land and wealth in the East attracted many younger sons of noble families who had limited inheritance prospects in Europe. Adventure and glory. For the knightly class, the crusade offered the chance to achieve fame and honor, fulfilling the chivalric ideals of bravery and loyalty. Papal ambitions. Urban II's call to crusade also reflected his broader political and ecclesiastical goals. Strengthening papal authority. By positioning the papacy as the leader of a unified Christendom, Urban sought to enhance the Church's spiritual and temporal power. Reconciliation with the East. Urban viewed the Crusade as an opportunity to heal the rift between the Eastern and Western churches, potentially bringing the Orthodox Church back under papal authority. Chapter 4. The immediate aftermath. Recruitment and mobilization. Urban's call sparked an unprecedented response, with thousands of knights, clergy, and commoners taking up the cross. Preachers like Peter the Hermit and Walter Sans Avoir spread the message across Europe, rallying support among all social classes. The People's Crusade. The first wave of crusaders, composed largely of peasants and led by figures like Peter the Hermit, marched eastward in 1096. However, their lack of organization and military discipline led to disastrous encounters, including massacres of Jewish communities in the Rhineland and their eventual defeat by Seljuk forces. The Prince's Crusade. The main crusading armies, led by prominent nobles such as Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond IV of Toulouse, and Bohemond of Taranto, followed in 1096 to 1097. These more organized forces would achieve the dramatic victories that defined the First Crusade. Impact on Europe. The Council of Clermont and the subsequent mobilization of the Crusades had far-reaching effects on European society. Increased papal prestige. Urban's successful rallying of Europe elevated the papacy's authority, solidifying its role as a unifying force in Christendom. Militarization of Christianity. The Crusades institutionalized the idea of holy war, merging religious devotion with military action in a way that would shape European identity for centuries. Chapter 5. The broader legacy of the Council of Clermont. The crusading movement. The Council of Clermont laid the foundation for a series of crusades that would dominate European history for the next 2 centuries. Establishment of Crusader states. The First Crusade's success led to the establishment of the Kingdom of Jerusalem and other Crusader states, creating a lasting, if precarious, Christian presence in the Holy Land. Cultural and economic exchange. The Crusades facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between Europe and the Islamic world, influencing the development of both civilizations. Enduring ideals. The rhetoric and ideals articulated at Clermont shaped the cultural and religious mindset of medieval Europe. The crusading ethos. The concept of fighting for faith and the promise of spiritual rewards became deeply ingrained in Western culture, influencing subsequent conflicts and religious movements. Unity and division. While the Crusades briefly united Christendom against a common enemy, they also exacerbated tensions with the Islamic world and deepened. Chapter 6. The Council of Clermont and its influence on future crusades. The Council of Clermont did more than initiate the First Crusade. It established a framework for future crusading efforts, embedding the concept of holy war into the religious and political fabric of medieval Europe. The rhetoric, ideals, and mobilization strategies that emerged from Clermont resonated throughout subsequent crusades. The evolution of crusading ideals. The principles articulated at Clermont, defending Christendom, reclaiming sacred spaces, and earning spiritual rewards, became cornerstones of crusading ideology. Expansion of targets. While the First Crusade focused on the Holy Land, later crusades expanded their scope. Campaigns against Muslims in Iberia, pagan tribes in the Baltic, and even heretical Christians, such as the Cathars in southern France, were justified using the language of holy war pioneered at Clermont. The rise of indulgences. Pope Urban II's promise of indulgences for crusaders became a powerful tool for the Church, not only to rally support for military campaigns, but also to assert its authority over spiritual matters. This practice evolved into a broader system of spiritual rewards, which played a key role in financing and organizing later crusades. The militarization of Christianity. The Council of Clermont institutionalized the idea that warfare could be a legitimate and even sacred expression of Christian piety. This militarization of religion influenced the character of European warfare and diplomacy. Crusading orders. The formation of military orders, such as the Knights Templar, Knights Hospitaller, and Teutonic Knights, exemplified the fusion of religious devotion and martial discipline. These orders perpetuated the ideals of Clermont, acting as both warriors and protectors of Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. Knights and chivalry. The Crusades elevated the knightly class by aligning their martial skills with religious purpose. The rhetoric of Clermont reinforced the idea that knights had a divine duty to protect Christendom, shaping the culture of chivalry in Europe. Crusade recruitment strategies. Urban II's methods at Clermont became a blueprint for mobilizing large-scale participation in later Crusades. Preaching campaigns. The use of charismatic preachers, such as Bernard of Clairvaux during the Second Crusade, mirrored Urban's strategy of inspiring the masses with vivid rhetoric and promises of spiritual rewards. Preaching campaigns became essential for rallying both nobles and commoners. Symbolism and rituals. The act of taking the cross, introduced at Clermont, became a central ritual in Crusade recruitment. Crusaders wore crosses on their clothing as a visible sign of their commitment, symbolizing their unity and shared purpose. Popular participation. The Council of Clermont's appeal to all social classes set a precedent for inclusive recruitment. While knights and nobles led the Crusades, the involvement of peasants and commoners ensured widespread support and participation. Chapter 7. The global impact of the Council of Clermont. The Council of Clermont's influence extended far beyond Europe, shaping relations between the Latin West, the Byzantine Empire, and the Islamic world. Impact on the Byzantine Empire. Pope Urban II's call for aid was initially framed as a response to Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos' request for military support. However, the subsequent events strained relations between the Latin West and the Byzantine East. Tensions over leadership.